Hi there and welcome back to the ESPN Footy Podcast.
Yes, hello everybody. Matt Walsh here with another big episode of the ESPN Footy Pod. Jake Michaels, nice to hear from you this Tuesday morning. How's your weekend? Were you channel flicking like the rest of us, or did you find one thing you liked on the weekend and just stick with it? And that's the 7 hours of footy that we had on Sunday.
Yeah, I was trying to plan the weekend around it, and then all the games got changed. So between footy and Olympics, I was saying to someone the other day, I actually touched the back of my TV at one point, and it was like on fire. I hadn't turned it off in like 2 days.
You don't need to turn the heater on when you've had the TV on that long. Christian Jolly, you're probably more contractually obliged to watch the footy than the Olympics, but surely you've been keeping up to date with the Australians and their efforts in the pool and elsewhere.
Yeah, Saturday night free of footy, so able to catch up there and watch a bit of Olympics. But yeah, Sunday got a bit hectic there, so didn't see much Olympics on Sunday with the 5 AFL games. But yeah, trying to fit them both in.
Fair play, I think, to the AFL guys about how they handled that and how quickly they moved things. You just get the feeling that when the pandemic sort of first started, everything was mired in trepidation and
well, they're getting used to it now.
Yeah, and they're able to sort of just move so quickly. So at one point, I think I was calling. I was just saying, bring forward the pre-finals bye or something, and just have a few teams take the bye and see how you go and reset. But they're able to make it work, and we still have a season, and we're only a couple of weeks left. So fingers crossed they can get it out of the way and without too much, I guess, interruption. Before we do jump into another big episode, something quirky or interesting from the weekend that grabbed your attention, Jake?
Well, I think like all of us, we were stunned with West Coast performance against Collingwood. Yet another horrible outing for the Eagles. And I was just curious because they're still 7th on the ladder. And most people would do their ladder predictors about this time of the year. And I've got them still making it, which is kind of crazy given how poor they've been. It's just mainly because the teams around them are stumbling. But their percentage right now is 95.9. If the season was to finish now and they were 7th with that percentage making finals, it would be to put this in a perspective as to how bad they are, that would be the second worst percentage of a finals team since 2000. Only Melbourne in 2005 had a worse percentage, and it was only by 0.1%. So I think it just highlights how bad West Coast have been this year when we look at percentage as an indicator of their season on a whole and whether they've won or lost it. And they've lost it by 5%.
It's funny because they're in 7th, so there's another team that's going to probably file in below them. And they might have
Freo's on 90% at the moment, and they're in 8th. So people might say, well, why aren't we talking about Freo? But I think it's pretty clear. You look at the fixture. Freo's not going to make it. They had a good win, good on them. But particularly with the injuries and a really tough last 3 games, they're not making it. But West Coast probably do, and that's the crazy thing.
I think you're not giving enough credit to the round 22. I don't want to get the word wrong here. Derby. Which one are we going with? But that's a massive one. I haven't got West Coast locked in because they're got Melbourne this week. West Coast, a pretty hard one, but then Freo West Coast round 22. I think that'll really sort of set the landscape.
Can the Dockers beat them though? They never beat them.
They don't usually, but on form.
They should say what if it's Freo's home game. I believe it is because I think West Coast had the one earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Why not lobby to get down to Geelong? Any chance?
Tell you what. Wouldn't be the worst idea.
No, it wouldn't. We'll touch on finals and the final 8 and all that sort of stuff a little bit later in the episode. Christian, something from the weekend that caught your attention?
Yeah, it's probably been for a few weeks now, and this player's probably gone from one of the most talked about players in the competition to probably not enough mention in the last few weeks for Jordan De Goey. Career high 34 touches. So, same game Jake's just talking about how woeful West Coast was. But De Goey, has become, a prime ball-moving midfielder now since about round 13. So, career high 34 on the weekend. But, since round 13, he's number 1 in the comp for score involvement, 2nd for uncontested possession, 6th for metres gained retained, 10th for disposals, number 1 at Collingwood and all those stats. Just don't know if he's getting enough credit for how much he's, probably Collingwood's a little bit forgotten about at this stage of the season. They're not getting, and I always found Jordan De Goey, all he needed to do was play on a Friday night and everyone would be talking about him for the whole weekend because he seems to be a bit of a commentator's love child. But I think it's gone the other way now. I don't think anyone's giving enough credit for how well De Goey's gone in probably the last 6 or 7 weeks now.
It's interesting.
He's top 3 player in the league.
Maybe 2 years too early.
Well, that's the thing.
I always felt he was. The comp with De Goey was someone like Dusty, and I've always felt he was just his talent was a bit wasted purely playing as a forward. And I think now they've got the balance right where he can play in the midfield. I think he might have gone in maybe Bucks' last game or second last game, and he's sort of stayed there throughout. And his numbers have been really consistent. He can still go forward and hit the scoreboard. But
so pre round 13, it was about a 25% midfield, 75% forward split. Now he's up to about 60, 65% midfield, about 30, 35% forward. So yeah, definitely becoming more of a permanent midfielder in recent weeks.
I want to keep an eye on. Something I noticed, pretty good game on Sunday afternoon between Sydney and Essendon, another shootout, another game where both teams
the double 100 pointers.
Yeah, it hasn't happened too often this year, but Essendon seems to be on the butt end of a few of those. And you look at their, speaking of percentage, their percentage is actually quite good. They're above 100, but I think a game and a half outside the 8 at the moment, or half a game. But that's not what I noticed. What I did notice was, especially in the second half, a lot of snap goals, but in general play, not a lot of set shot looks at the goal. But that's also not quite what I noticed. It was just a bit quirky. But
get on with it.
I'm getting on with it. Late in the game, the Swans needed a sealer, right? And they get a free kick on the half forward line, and then the ball goes inside 50, and Buddy's taken out from behind, gets pushed in the back. A great opportunity for him to get another goal on his way to 1,000. Callum Mills has taken the ball that sort of spilled out the back, received a hand pass, played on and kicked the goal, which ended up being the sealer. Callum, give it back to Buddy, my man. What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't reckon Big Bud would have been too happy with that one.
I would have been fuming.
I did see that, and I thought the same thing. But I don't know. I think you just got to, if it's a guaranteed goal, you sort of take it. That's the rule. You play on and take the kick if it's a guaranteed goal, even though we see players all the time playing on when it's far from guaranteed and they miss. But I think he was well within his rights to do it. But if he was on 9.99, he's putting the hands in the air for sure.
It's round 23, they're not making finals. Yeah, interesting. Anyway, let's get cracking. Plenty to get into. Jake, you kind of mentioned it off the top, but there is a clear top 6 teams this season, and then a band of sort of, 5 or 6 merry men chasing. And in seasons gone by, it sort of seems that there is 1 or 2 clubs that are just making up the numbers in finals. I know that you like referencing the Bulldogs of 2016 and their wonderful run into a grand final and then ultimately a premiership. But is there a case for making it a top 6 instead of a top 8, Jake?
Don't get me wrong. I think 8 is the right number for an 18-team competition. Mm-hmm. I like the idea that less teams play finals, and the idea that some people want to have extra finals and wild cards and all this nonsense and have 10 plus teams in contention. It just cheapens the achievement of making and playing in finals. However, looking at it the other way for this year, it's clear. I said it last week on the podcast. It's a 2-horse race. It's the Bulldogs and the Cats at the front, and behind them, there's a band of 4 teams, Melbourne, Port, Sydney, and Brisbane, that can still win it, clearly, but I don't think they will. But after that, we've got the bottom 2 teams in the 8, and then the next sort of 3 or 4 on the ladder. They're clearly a few rungs below all the teams that I just said above them. Is there the case to have a top 6 this year? Well, if there was ever a year to do it, it would be this year, where we've had so many changes and distractions. The AFL could do it. They're not going to, because why would they get rid of finals? That's where so much money is made from the finals, the broadcast deals, ticket sales, if we're able to have it. They're never going to get rid of it. But is there the idea of not necessarily reducing the number of finals that we currently have, 9, but just having the top 6 playing in another finals format or structure where we can keep 9 or close to 9 finals, but make it more competitive rather than having, let's be honest, whether it's West Coast or Freo or St Kilda or Essendon or Carlton or whoever's going to make Richmond, whoever makes those bottom 2 spots, are they going to be competitive? I don't think anyone really thinks they are. Thinking
back to elimination finals in years gone by, all I can sort of remember more so than the other way is a lot of spankings, some really big losses.
Exactly, yeah.
2020 probably out of the box. There were two pretty close ones, which is good. There've been a couple of really good, like there was one or two with extra time, which has always been pretty fun. That Port Adelaide West Coast game, but like 2019, the elimination finals, West Coast beat Essendon by 55 points. Giants beat the Dogs by 58. In 2018, Sydney beat the Giants by 50. Melbourne beat Geelong by 30, but Geelong only scored 46 points. You keep going back, 2017, Sydney beat the Bombers, 65 points. 2016, 47 and 62 point margins. 2014, Richmond won the coin toss and went the wrong way and gave up the first 20 bazillion goals of that game and were never in it. Like, Christian, my eyes aren't deceiving me. The average margin in elimination finals is much bigger than those in semis, prelims, grand finals.
Yeah, so I've gone from 2010 onwards. So just, looking at the last sort of decade. And they are their elimination finals, 34 points per game is the average margin. It's almost it is a goal ahead of qualifying finals, which played on the same weekend, average margin 28. So it doesn't seem like a massive number, but yeah, as I said, they've had 22 finals, elimination finals in that time. 9 of those have been over 45 points. Only 4 of the qualifying finals have been over 45 points out of the 22. So again, they come up as probably the least exciting or the least closest of the groupings of the finals.
How do we do it then? I mean, is there the case of saying, okay, the top 2 teams, the Cats and the Dogs, they are automatically through, and then you have sort of 3 play 6, 4 play 5. There's just no way of doing it where you're going to have a lot of finals, and that's why no one's ever going to go for it. No one's ever going to want to have it. And the other thing is, the fewer teams you have in the finals, the less interest you have from supporters of other teams that all of a sudden, their teams aren't in contention anymore. So they're never going to do it. So I think we've got to just accept the fact that we're probably going to have a couple of blowouts early. But there's no guarantee. I mean, if West Coast did finish 8th and they play Sydney or Port or whoever's going to finish 5th,
there is always a chance of...
They can beat them. I mean, it's not like it's impossible, but certainly on form, you look at it and you think whoever's going to be those 2 elimination finals, as we said before, the 4th, 5th, 6th, whoever finishes 5th and 6th look comfortably better than anyone that can finish 7th and 8th.
So having a quick doodle, something I might have come up with here is you do have a wildcard weekend, and it's an actual wildcard weekend and not just another round of finals, which is what some people have suggested. But you have 7 and 8 playoff to make the finals. But in the same weekend, you have 1 and 2 playoff for the chance. And that's the double chance game. No double chance game for 3 and 4. So it's just 1 and 2. Winner goes through to a prelim. Loser plays the winner of the wild card. So the wild card, sure, you play a team ranked around you, and it's good fun. And if you win, you go through, but you play the second ranked team, and that's when it becomes hard. But
wouldn't you get? But then you'd get that's even more likely to be a blowout.
Potentially, but it's only one blowout, and you still preserve the double chance. You still have the wild card, but it's really a top 6 that are the teams that are making it. I don't know. Look, like you said, it's really hard to sort of get your head around, and the way that it works at the moment, I think I agree that 8 out of 18 teams makes it is enough. I wouldn't go the other way and have the top 10 making it, because I think the quality just drops off too far most years.
If in 5, 6, 10 years time we have a Tasmanian team and an NT team, and we have 20 teams in the comp,
keep it at 8.
Should we keep it at 8?
Yeah,
I think we should
improve the quality of the finals.
I'm strongly for keeping it as is, as at the 8, and even if we went to 20, 22 teams, I think you still keep it to 8.
Fair enough. Hey, we got asked this on Twitter this week about coin tosses and the stats involved with coin tosses, and it actually kind of piqued my interest because I think this is quite fascinating, because clearly toss of a coin in broad terms 50-50, whether it's heads or tails. So I thought we'd task Christian this week with the teams that have won the toss the most this year and those that have lost the toss the most this year, and if it means anything at all. Christian, is there a correlation between winning the toss and winning the game?
Not at all, really. So straight stats for this year: win the toss, win the game 49.7% of the time. So
that's
just
to me, that's interesting. I mean, you kind of figure it's going to be pretty much bang on 50, but it's slightly under. If you win the toss, you got a slightly less than 50% chance of winning the game.
Yeah, and it drops even further, which is interesting to me. Again, just in looking at the first quarter, do you win the first quarter? Only 44% of the time the teams win the toss and then go on to win the first quarter. So that's the one where you actually get to pick the direction you're going within the conditions that there are. So yeah, that doesn't even sort of give you a sort of a leg up winning the toss to win the first quarter.
Uh,
And just looking at again, so that was sort of the raw number, but digging into it, there is sort of a few quirkiness with teams. I believe it's the away team that calls heads or tails. So I don't know how teams can get so lucky or get it so wrong. But Port Adelaide and Melbourne are the leaders for winning the coin tosses. 14 times out of their 19 games, they've both won the coin toss. Essendon only 4 at the other end of the table. So just cannot get a break with the coin toss. But as Jake just said, they're less likely to win the game anyway. So maybe they're
that's why they're
tanking
doing
the
well.
coin toss.
It's such a crapshoot, isn't it? I mean, the fact that it, like, statistically over a certain number, like if you flipped a coin a million times, it's probably going to be close to 50-50. But you can have one team that's winning it 14 out of 19 times, and then one team for 5 out of 9. It's kind of bizarre. But the first quarter one is the one that really gets me, in that you have control over the way that you're kicking. And if you're, say, down in Launceston or in Brisbane or whatever, like, you're trying to choose the advantageous conditions.
But how often do we really have an end that's massively beneficial to kick to? It's not like every game there's a gale blowing.
True. That's true. I think it isn't at Marvel Stadium. Surely it's just eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Marvel Stadium, I always notice, and I haven't called a game this year, but whenever I called a game, I always notice whoever wins the coin toss just kicks to the end they've just been warming up at anyway. Yeah. So there's no point having the coin toss, because they get given an end before they run out by the AFL, and they just stick to that end when they start the game.
Or if the skipper's a defender, he'll say, all right, we'll defend down this end where we are, and I don't have to move to the forwards
the other end
and take a hike. That's fascinating. Anything else on coin tosses just before we move on?
Again, just a few quirky ones. So Adelaide win the toss, 1-9 for winning the game. Lose the toss, 5-4 this year. So again, maybe they celebrate their coin toss wins a bit too much and get ahead of themselves. But 1-9 if they win the coin toss. And Richmond a bit on the flip side, so 3-7
on the flip side. Well done.
Oh, I didn't even realise. 3-7 when they win the toss, and 5-4 when they lose the toss. So more chance to winning the game when they lose the toss, Richmond. But again, nothing major in it. I wouldn't be going out and telling any teams to change their strategy at the coin toss.
Jake, are you a heads or a tails man? Or do you change it up?
I'm not much of a. What do you mean? I don't sit at home flipping coins.
No. But if you were,
if I was picking, I'd. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if players change it up, or they just always say heads or always say tails. That's a good question.
Maybe
that's the one thing we don't get to record. We don't get to record the call. We just get to record the winner. So we don't know if heads wins more or tails wins more, but that could be the next level of.
I reckon I'd just always say heads.
Well, why don't we ask the captains next year if they have
that's a good Captain's Day question.
A technique. Do they always stick with heads? Do they always go tails, or do they mix it up? If they haven't lost 1-1 for a while, do they? Yeah, that's interesting. Coin toss stats. There you go. More interesting than I thought that would be. So thank you very much, Jake. You've been big on this. Why did you want Christian to investigate who has the most 1-2s in the league?
It's something that I've.
Are you playing fantasy? Are you trying to get?
No, I don't. It's surprised a lot of people. I actually don't play fantasy. I don't know if it's too much of a commitment. I used to do it, but it would just, I don't know.
Footy tips is enough for me.
Yeah. But obviously watching, we talk about as footy, fans and viewers, we talk a lot about players stat padding and that sort of stuff, and trying to get the cheeky little 1-2s and all that. And I think you can ask anyone that watches the game, and there's probably a few names that sort of spring to mind when you talk about that. But there's one player I've noticed this year doing it a lot, and I was more curious than anything to see where he ranks on this list of the most 1-2s or 1-2-3s, as I think it is in the competition this year. And turns out he's top of the list. So over to you, Christian.
Well, it's not technically a 1-2 that you record at Champion Data, is it?
So what we've just sort of done a quick raw sort of scraping of the data to look at if you've had the disposal. Your team's had the next disposal, and then you've had the third one. So looking at, not necessarily that you've got a handball receive immediately after, but you've just you've had the first and third disposal within the chain, if you want to look at it sort of that way. So you've given it to someone and got it back from them. The leading player is Aaron Hall with 35 this year. So the numbers are sort of a bit lowish, but as Jake sort of pointed out, 2 times per game, he's sort of getting the ball to a teammate and getting it back. So that 35 number represents how many times he got it back from the teammate. So one ahead of Paul Seedsman, 34. Third in the comp's Jack Zeeble, another North player down back who they just, try to get the ball into his hands as often as possible. And an underrated one for me, I think, would have been doing it highly across his career. Zach Tui is actually fourth at 30. So I don't think Zach Tui sort of gets enough credit for how hard he actually runs. I think people still see him as sort of, a good back pocket or a good halfback.
You see him in the half forward line a lot of the time.
That goes forward a little bit of pitch-ins for Geelong. He's actually probably up there in terms of top 4 or 5 in their running capacity, and he sort of does sort of link up across the ground.
And he's such a good kick, so that if he hand passes, you probably want to give it back to him, because if he can get a bit of clear air, and he gets the ball on the boot, it's probably going to a teammate.
Yeah, and that's the fifth on this list, or equal fifth on this list. Daniel Rich is probably the poster boy for it for Brisbane. I think they do, any chance that Daniel Rich gets, he sort of kicks it from the half back line. He's always trying to get it again on the wing, running through for his next disposal. So he's done it 29 times this year.
Rich surprised me a bit purely because he's usually such a long penetrating kick. So I wouldn't have thought he'd be on the end of the next touch.
Yeah, I reckon he goes shorter from the back line and longer in the forward half. So he likes to sort of, if you picture him getting the ball 40 out, he'll chip it into the centre circle or centre square and maybe run past for the next handball, and that's when you go long into the forward 50. But yeah, again, Zach Tui and Daniel Rich, I feel like have been doing it for, I've only looked at for this year, and Hall, Seedsman and Zeeble probably, starting to do it more first time across their careers, whereas Zach Tui and Daniel Rich, I reckon, would have been high up in this stat in most seasons.
See, this is interesting. This is the sort of stuff that fantasy players like to hear. So if you're keen on fantasy and you've got either some trades left, or if you're looking for next season already, there are some names obviously clearly to look out for.
Yeah, and there's another name that's so again, that was just looking at all possessions from a teammate's disposal. I just looked at one sort of, I don't know if it's an underrated stat, but handball receives. I know it's sort of a common stat. It's a main way, a main type of possession like a mark or a handball receive or gather from hit out. But yeah, the player that come up high for that one, just sort of, again, running past, Zach Merritt, 325 handball received this year. Second is Tom Mitchell, 297. Third, Jack McRae at 295, and Took Miller's fourth at 240. So he's a fair way ahead of fourth, Zach Merritt. So 325, he's probably, the most common one to actually run around the back of a teammate and get that one-off handball received. So again, probably not a number a lot of people pay a lot of credence to. But yeah, again, talking fantasy or things like that, Zach Merritt always seems to be around, calling for the ball, and often gets it.
There you go, Jake. Your man, Aaron Hall, right at the top of the list. You must be pretty happy calling that one.
He's not my man, but I did think he'd be top of that list. Yeah, he. Some of those names were surprising in the 1-2 list, but Aaron Hall wasn't. And that may be because a lot of the time he gives those little 1 meter handballs and instantly throws the hands out to sort of say, give it back to me. And, I'm not an old 60-year-old man saying, just kick the ball. But it's like, why are you doing that? You're just putting a team out under pressure just to instantly get the ball back.
Well, if it releases pressure the other way, then you can get a clear run at it and then kick it.
I think a lot of those little handballs are unnecessary, and I truly believe there are players in the league that do want to pad their stats. I think it's true.
Interesting. Well, we can maybe investigate that another time. The biggest stat padders, and we'll work out a formula. Coaching job security bands, Jake. So to put this in perspective, there are probably 4 bands that I'll put coaches in at the moment, and a coach can be untouchable. They can be safe for now. They can be on notice, or they're a dead man walking. So if we look at those 4 bands, and the last month of the season's coming up, and you know what that means, clubs might look at their coaches and make a decision one way or another. So I thought we'd go through the list of coaches in the AFL at the moment and put each one of them into one of those 4 bands.
I like it.
Do we want to go alphabetical order of clubs? Maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, we can do that.
What do you think of Matthew Nix?
I think refresh me on the categories again.
Have you got the run sheet in front of you or not?
No, I don't. Untouchable.
Safe for now. On notice. And
I think he's on notice.
You think he's on notice?
Yeah, I do.
I think he's safe for now. I think he's done a really good job compared to last season and the way that the start of the season was much better than the last maybe 2 months have been. However, they got a win last week, as in not the week just gone, but they got a win the week prior. And that does wonders for a young group that it is rebuilding. I think you got to give him a couple of years to be
6 wins. I think. I think any team that's going to be in the bottom 3, I think you got to be on notice to some extent. But yeah, I agree. I think they surprised in the early 6-7 weeks of the season, but they've been reasonably poor throughout. So I'd say he's on notice.
Chris Fagan, and would it have differed to what it was a month ago?
Yeah, I think it would have. He's safe for now, but I reckon a month ago he was untouchable. But all of a sudden, a little bit of a form slump for Brisbane, might not be making top four. And who knows, if they bow out in the first week of finals, then that category drops again.
But
He was so safe like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Everyone was reaching for the record books and telling us he was going to be the oldest premiership coach. So it probably has turned a fair bit for him in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
That's stiff. David Teague's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'll let you answer, Teague. Where do you sit on him?
He's very much on notice, isn't he? Since Clarko and Hawthorn have decided to part ways, I think he's almost very close to that sort of dead man walking. But it might be like, the pressure needle that you get on gauges in cartoons. It might be like flicking between the two of on notice and dead man walking. Obviously, a win like the one on the weekend helps, but they also lost to North the week before. So maybe they just cancel each other out, and he's very, very much on notice.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Oh, agree. Don't think there's more to say on that.
Robert Harvey's a hard one because he's not technically the coach.
Well, I think you got to say he's safe for now.
Yeah.
He's done a pretty good job. He's going to
He's playing the kids.
He's coaching out the year. And I tell you what, we all sat here a month ago and said he's highly unlikely to get the job. If they can have another win or two to finish the season, you got to say he's a chance. I'd say he's safe for now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's probably the safe way to go after an interim coach. Safe for now, no guarantees.
They're certainly playing better and playing a more attractive brand of footy under him in the last month. So
yeah,
he's done his job.
Truck Rutten.
Christian.
Safe for now, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Almost. Is he untouchable? Maybe. They were supposed to be bottom four. They're still there with a chance to make finals. They're playing sexy footy. I'll tell you that much. I'm sure their fans are back on. We speak to Rowan and things like that. I'm sure the fans are back on board with them. So I'd probably move him up to untouchable for now.
It'd be untouchable if they could finally beat Sydney in a close one, I think.
It'd be untouchable if they could finally win a coin toss.
Yeah, well, maybe that's the difference.
Longmuir.
On notice, probably. Okay. Between the on notice and safe for now, I think. Again, he hasn't been there that long and he's had some injuries. They've had a few things to battle, a bit of a rebuild, but they got good young kids. We know they're getting better. I guess it's interesting to see what happens, with players like Fife and Walters now injured. Mundy's older, but we know he's playing next year. I think he's safe for now, probably. Yeah, in the middle of those two brackets, but next year will be the interesting one for him.
Chris Scott been around the traps a while.
I think he's probably untouchable at the moment. I don't see him leaving the post anytime soon.
Why would you?
They're a top two team. Could potentially go back to back in reaching grand finals, and they may go all the way this year. So I don't think something disastrous would have to happen for him to drop out of that top category at the moment.
Stuart Dew.
I think he feels a bit dead man walking. He really does. I know it's the same old story with Gold Coast. Some good performances, but ultimately a poor season.
Yeah, the one thing that's caught my eye this week, sort of looking through Gold Coast numbers, and the one I stumbled across that I can't figure out if it's a positive or a huge negative is the last 4 weeks they've actually won. And again, we spoke about this last few weeks ago on the pod about breaking everything down by quarters and just trying to win a stat across the quarter. And a lot of the teams look and break down their games that way. They've won the pressure factor 13 times in their last 16 quarters, which is the most of any team. Against Melbourne in the first half, I sort of made the comment that their pressure was really, really good. They were at elite level for a while on Fox's, pressure graph that they put up across. They were over 200. And they're actually making it hard for Melbourne, but they're just disastrous on every other stat. So they're working their backsides off defensively, pressure, and I think a lot of that comes down to coaching, application, and having a lot of focus on the pressure. But for what they're doing so well, it's just the rest of the game's just falling apart. They're just not, they can't retain the ball, they can't win the ball, they can't score when they get it inside 50. So again, to me, it looks a lot like it's the talent that's devoid. It's not the coaching. I think the application's there, and I think he's safe for now. But just the way the numbers get broken down, the talent just can't sustain it for 20 odd weeks across the season.
And the good news for Suns fans is that they are able to lock up these young players who can hopefully develop into, players with bigger tanks and with more consistency. And it's just a shame because goodwill doesn't go a long way in footy. You remember back to at halftime of the Brisbane game, and they looked great. And they'd won the game the week before.
Yeah.
And then
that halftime break, they've been horrible.
They've been horrible.
Big thing for Gold Coast last 3 or 4 years was what is their style? What are they trying to do? And we couldn't pinpoint that. They've got the kick mark and they're trying to play West Coast type style. And they did it really, really well. Still number 1 for uncontested mark. So I think that's why another tick for Stuart Dew. He's implemented a style that they want to play. They've just got to go out and execute it. And whether that's the cattle or the park at the moment, that's holding him back.
I think with Clarkson as a free agent, he's on notice. For me, I don't think he's a dead man walking, but I don't think he's safe for now by any means. Leon Cameron, Jake, you've always been.
Well, how can he be safe for now?
We can't be.
Yeah,
I'm saying he's not.
He's a dead man walking, Clarko.
Oh no, I'm saying with Clarkson as a free agent, Dew is.
Oh, Dew. I thought you were talking about Clarko. Sorry,
no. We're getting to Clarko. We've got one more to go before then. Leon Cameron.
Oh, he's a dead man walking.
Really?
He's a dead man. Yeah, he's...
Sorry, I just laughed. It wasn't a disrespect towards Leon Cameron. I'm surprised you're saying he's a dead man walking.
Yeah, I think he is.
Well, for how long is he going to walk?
Tell me what else he is. He's certainly not untouchable. He's not safe for now. I mean, you could argue he might be on notice, but I think how many years have we seen this? Yes, they lost talent in the off season, but I tell you what, the biggest frustration everyone's always had with the Giants is their horrible inconsistency. And yet again, we've seen it all throughout this year. We see it throughout games and throughout the course of the season. I think he's been there a long time now, and I feel like they're desperate for change.
Fair enough. Well, Clarkson and Mitchell, I don't know how you can kind of band these guys in, but you'd think Clarkson's a dead man walking because he's
Mitchell's got to be untouchable because he's just swaned in and he's taken over the show.
Goodwin.
Goodwin.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say Clarkson, well, he's not on notice. How's he on notice? He doesn't really fit into any of those categories because we don't really know what the next stage is going to be for him. But I'd say he's untouchable for at least for that moment when he goes to his next club.
Yeah, fair enough.
Goodwin is untouchable, I'd say. Yeah.
I think he's got good buy-in from that group.
It's been I think we underestimate how well Melbourne's been able to turn it around from that really... Obviously, they had that out of the box year that everyone thought, and then they went into the wilderness a bit. But they've turned it around really well. I think he deserves a lot of respect and credit for that.
Agree. David Noble.
I'll throw up untouchable.
Untouchable. Yeah, I agree with you, Christian.
They're one of the informed teams at the moment. One of the youngest teams going around. He's this year alone. The last 5 weeks alone probably bought him another year. For me, they're showing signs. Yeah,
I think you got to persevere for at least 3 or 4 years with a coach like this to see what's going on before you start making big judgment calls. Hinkley, he's always been up and down in terms of probably somewhere between these bands, but where do we have him after a minor premiership last year, and now they're on the precipice of the 4?
Yeah, I think they're going to make the 4. I'd say if they make the 4, win a final, I think he's safe. He's safe for now.
Yeah.
But again, he's like a Leon Cameron. He's been at the job for quite a while. They've had a bit of success. They've been top 4, top 8. They've fallen out. They've been around that mark. I think one poor month or one poor, period of the year would really cost him if it was to happen in the finals or next year. But I think right now he's safe for now. He's certainly not untouchable.
It's not worth disrupting the apple cart at this point of his tenure, I think. And Koshy tried to do it earlier last year. And that sort of blew up in his face spectacularly. I say spectacular in the sense that Koshy would probably be thrilled with a minor premiership, but they obviously didn't go on with it. Who else we got on this list? Hardwick. Ooh, Hardwick's an interesting one, Christian. What are your thoughts on the Tigers coach?
Yeah, he's dead. Touchable. Again, how many years does 3 premierships buy? He's untouchable for now. I know off field and things like that, they had a bit of a rocky off season, but
could you imagine if they got rid of him? It sounds ridiculous.
He's untouchable for at least another 18
2 years. I'd say, he's got 2 more years of no one's really going to... That'd have to be really poor, not next year, the year after, for people to start saying it's time for him to go, I think. Even if they're poor next year and have another sort of similar finish, which I don't think they'll have.
Depends on the list management strategy too, I think. and which way they decide to go from here.
He's fine. He's as Christian said, he's bought himself plenty of time.
Brett Ratton.
Interesting. I'd say he's on notice big time.
Yeah.
He's not a dead man walking because they have had a better second half of the year, but yet again, they're stumbling. They're another team that's inconsistent. And I've always, as a Carlton supporter, I would love Brett Ratton. I was really upset when we let him go, as I think a lot of Carlton supporters were with what happened in that period. But he hasn't really done the job I thought he might have done at St Kilda. I think a lot of people rated St Kilda a little bit higher than where they've finished this year, particularly after last year. So he's on notice. Don't think he's super, in that bottom tier where his job's really unsafe, but he wouldn't want to have a poor start to next year because he would find himself as just about the most under pressure coach in the league.
Yeah, I think it's a big off season for the Saints too. I think they're still very one-paced around the midfield. They need to do something about that. And going after someone like Brad Crouch was never going to be the answer for what they needed in there. So I think there's a big off-season opportunity for them to get a dynamic, quick midfielder in. And they probably need to shore up the defense. The style that Ratton tries to play can leave them lacking back there. And I think that, getting some more help, especially given the way that Frawley quite hasn't panned out in terms of his injury as well. He's on notice for sure. Longmire, I think, is untouchable given what he's been able to do with the Swans this year, and especially in the last 6 weeks, having not been at home. I think his ability to inspire a group of young men to form and create resilience the way that he has, I think has just been remarkable. And I think
we sort of joke about it, but I did look at, spoke about Heaney kicking 5 last week, Papley kicking 4. The whole AFL and, even us on the pod, we're obsessed with Buddy kicking his 1,000. I think just being able to manage that and going, hey, we've got a finals campaign. We're a good chance here to maybe even shore up a top 4 spot. And they're clearly not looking for, we joke about it, Jake, tongue in cheek, when are they going to start kicking it all, directing all their ball to Buddy and that. There's no signs of it. They're still they're doing the job at hand. And I think the rest of us need to chill out on the Buddy 1000 talk, because I don't think it's at the forefront of Sydney's minds. And I think he's handled that well. The distraction, it wouldn't be a huge distraction, but I think the little bit of distraction with Buddy and trying to get him goals, it's clearly not the case the last 2 weeks, and they're winning well.
Mm.
I think Sydney is as good as Melbourne have been and are. I really think Sydney is just about the third best or third biggest chance to win the flag.
Second on the form ladder since the bye round. So
yeah, I think only the Dogs and Cats are more likely to win it than Sydney, which shows. I mean, whether you think they're third, fourth, or fifth, that jump from where they were last year is incredible. I think, as you say, it's pretty clear that he's untouchable.
Adam Simpson.
Well, he is a dead man walking.
That's a big call.
I think that's pretty clear.
As soon as this season?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's another one like Leon Cameron and Ken Hinkley. He's been there a long time. Similar sort of team where he's had the up and down, that success. But this year has been really, really bad. Their game plan's been exposed. He hasn't been able to rally them when they've been down. That's the thing that's been really disappointing with West Coast. It's not as how bad they've had some of these games against Geelong and Sydney and now Collingwood. As bad as they've been, it's their lack of response the following week, which I've really been surprised by. Losing to North as well, I think, after they had a really bad win.
Yeah,
you can't. If you're a team, not even a great team, if you're a good, solid team, you should be bouncing back big time after a poor loss. And the fact that he can't get them to do that is really surprising. And I still believe, talent-wise, West Coast are probably top 2 in the league for A-grade players on their list.
Yeah, I think those A-grade players are old now. That's the problem. And they've been injured at times. And so you can kind of say, well, we've had injuries, we've been unlucky. But these injuries are happening to blokes who are old. So you kind of need to expect that that's going to happen. And I don't think that West Coast... I can kind of see West Coast having a similar trajectory to Collingwood in that... Not in the sense of the salary cap stuff, but there's going to be a drop-off in talent, and they're going to have to try and rebuild, and I think it's going to come as a little bit of a shock. So I don't think he's a dead man walking right now, but he is well on notice.
No, he's dead. He's dead and walking.
Luke Beveridge, he's had a good season.
Yeah, pretty untouchable, I think, at the moment. There was a little bit of pressure around him, wasn't there, at some point? But I think he's, not this year, but I think he's, again, I don't think, you look at all those coaches in the top 3 positions. I don't think there's any reason. Why would you want to change it? He's a premiership coach. He's managed to get them back up into the top 2 on the ladder or top of the ladder. And they're one of the favourites to win the flag this year. So as you said, why adjust anything at this point in time? I'd say he's well and truly safe. Probably just about the safest coach in the league at the moment.
The big thing for me was that the Dogs had a fair bit of expectation on them going into this season, considering how the Jamara pickup, then Treloar, the expectation was pretty high, and I think that they've still somehow managed to match that and if not exceed it. So I think you're spot on. He's untouchable. All right, well, that wraps up the coaching job. So wait,
how many dead men walking did we have?
You had 3, I think, and I had 1.
Who was your 1?
Who did I say was my 1?
Leon Cameron. I had Leon Cameron, Adam
Simpson, and Teague.
David Teague.
I think I had Teague, but only just. It was going between them. Yeah, could be a couple of coaching changes at the end of the season. Keep an eye on those. Justified hype or hyperbole time. The segment where I'll say a statement and you guys need to tell me whether the hype is justified or I'm speaking in hyperbole. These first 2 are from the same games. This is good. Christian, Sydney Stack has saved his career.
I think so. I don't know if it was ever in trouble. I know what you're alluding to and things like that. But seriously talented player, very, very young. There was always, he wasn't taken in the national draft because there was always issues about his maturity levels and things like that. So again, he's just a player we have to be patient with. I don't know about the word of saved his career, but he's definitely showed he's a good player and he fits into the AFL.
Jake, Freo's retro Guernsey is better than their current home Guernsey.
This sounds like one that you would like to answer. I'm going to let you answer this because you're a big Guernsey man.
I am a big Guernsey man. Yeah, I think it is. I think the purple with the white chevrons, I think is great. It's really classy, but it's also quite boring. And having the green, no other team has green on their Guernsey. Having the green, the little red accents, the purple, the anchor, the whole lot of it, I thought it was wonderful.
I loved it, but whether that was just nostalgia hitting me, I don't know if I could put up with it for 11 weeks. But I loved it because I did remember it took me back. I was actually at their first ever game at the MCG. I remember my dad took me along to watch that. And it just brought back, just some of the names. We're talking Scott Chisholm and Clive Waterhouse and Daniel.
I swear I was about
all
to
these
say
Freo names, but it was. I feel like it was more nostalgia. I loved it. I don't know if I want it to return for good though.
Let us know on Twitter at Footy Tips if you did or didn't like it.
It reminds me exactly of that. I remember just having footy cards as a kid, and Clive Waterhouse. I remember him wearing that Guernsey on on the footy card. That's what it reminds me of. Just me being a kid looking at my footy cards reminds me of that. That's what that Guernsey reminds me of.
Jack Viney deserves much more punishment than what he'll ultimately get at the tribunal.
Well, we don't know what he'll get at this point in time. I suspect it will probably be around 2 weeks. I don't know. That's sort of 1.5 to
weighted
2.
elbow into the throat of an opponent. Was it Sam Collins? I think it was.
Yeah, it was Sam Collins. I think if let's say he gets 2, then yes, I agree. I say it's justified that he should be getting more. But I said this last week about Buddy. I thought Buddy should have got 2 to 3 weeks for that clear.
He's a non-football act.
Elbow to the face of Luke Ryan, I think it was, thinking back. And he got 1, and then it was eventually downgraded to nothing, and he was able to play. So the AFL's not doing themselves any favors by letting these sort of acts off.
And then football acts are copping 1 and 2 weeks. I think the one
the biggest frustration
that keeps getting brought up is the Plowman one. How that's going to get more than something that Buddy when he throws an elbow back. Or the potential is that Viney may only get 1 or a big heavy fine. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, a dog act like that it's not a football act, give him a month and say, you've got to go and talk to someone. Get some counselling, for goodness sake. We shouldn't be seeing this sort of crap on the field.
Yeah, I'm not against giving players a month for that sort of stuff. And I've long said this sort of stuff. The AFL's my favourite sport. It really is. I love it. I watch every game every single week. Absolutely love the sport. But the biggest frustration I have with it, and it's not accuracy. It's not It's not high scores. It's not any of that crap, which I can live with. The thing that I hate most about the AFL, and to be honest, Australian sports culture as a whole, is that ridiculous macho mentality of just trying to constantly wrestle and fight with your opponents. Tell me another sport where you see this. Certainly outside of Australia, it does not happen. And I hate the fact that there's this constant
bumping, and
it's just the bumping and the grabbing and the
and
jumper punching and all that nonsense. Yet then players, when they come off the field, no one ever wants to say anything like we say about the US athletes where they're constantly talking themselves up. You never get that, the vocal side of it, but the physical side you get. I just hate it. It's just such a bad, lame, pathetic look. Like, just play the sport and don't bump in and elbow and do all that nonsense. Just grow up.
Yeah, that's a fair rant. We should bring back that segment. You've had a gutful. Don't mind that.
Gutful. I've had a 29-year gutful.
I'll throw this over to both of you because Christian, you're the stats guy, and Jake, you're the Brownlow guy. But the Bont's quiet week won't stop him from winning the Brownlow.
It won't stop him from winning the Brownlow.
Has he wrapped it up, do you think, already?
He hasn't wrapped it up.
I still got Clayton Oliver very, very high in my thinking. But again, that's just a personal opinion. It's again, there's probably 3 or 4 guys that you couldn't say it was wrong if they won it, with Jack McRae probably in that group as well. So
it's a 3-horse race. So the Premiership's a 2-horse race and the Brownlow's 3. It's Bontempelli, Oliver, and Wines, and nobody else. I think they're clearly the 3 ahead of the pack. Jack McRae was my pick at the start of the season. I'd love for him to win it, and I think he'll poll better than people expect purely because of the numbers he has, and he'll poll lots of 1s and maybe some 2s. But I think Bont's had so many great games. Oliver's had so many great games, and the difference with Wines is he hasn't got a lot of players there that will be taking a lot of votes off him in a team that's won a lot of games. Whereas Melbourne, you look at Petrarca's had best on-ground games. Gawn's had best on-ground games. Salem's had best on-ground games. So probably harder to get those 3s. But, yeah, I think it's out of those 3, and I think he's got one hand on it. If he can have another big game this week, who have the Bulldogs got this week? Off the top of my head, I'm thinking. I did the preview before, and it's already slipped out of my mind.
They got Essendon.
They got Essendon. So if you can have a big game against the Bombers, but, then you got Parrish and Merritt, who are also sort of top 10 chances at the moment. Top 7 chances. So
they got the Hawks the week after.
Yeah. So he's got one hand on it at the moment, but so has Ollie Wines and Clayton Oliver. Honestly, the Brownlow for most people is kind of boring. I like it all. I always like it, even if someone wins by 20 votes. But this year's count is going to be an epic because it's going to be super close. Normally, this point of the year, you know pretty much who's won it. They're almost an unbackable favorite, but to have, I think it's 3, but there's realistically probably 6 or 7 that are within a best on ground.
Seems like it'll be a high count.
I think it'll still be high. I still think 32 votes will be the number. About 32. 33 will win it. I've got Bontempelli on 29.5 right now, and Wines on 28, I think. And
there's a prop bet for you all at home.
Oh, it'll be over 30. It'll no doubt be over 30. Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating count with so many players that are potentially going to poll in the high 25s.
Thank you, everyone at home, for your ears again this week. It's been a fun episode. Jake, thank you. Olympics will be over by the time we speak to you next, so there'll be no talk of that at the top or distractions like you are watching the TV now. How's Luka Doncic going?
Oh, it's finished. I tell you what, though, I don't know if any of our audience have been watching the basketball, the Olympics, but the American/Canadian guy, I don't know, that's calling the basketball. You said it before. It sounds like he's commentating a funeral. That guy is horrible.
But Rowan doesn't mind having a go at commentators. You should have got him on this week. So.
Yeah, true. I'm sure the guy's a nice guy. Never heard his voice before, but man, he's boring. Doncic hits a 3. He's like, Doncic, he's got it.
All right, let's wrap that up. Get your footy tips in. A couple of rounds left. So if it's close at your workplace or amongst family or friends, don't forget, especially with games changing and venues and all that, make sure you do check before the games start and get your tips in. Christian, thanks for joining us. Jake, thank you. And to everyone at home, we'll speak to you in the next one.
Listen to all the latest episodes by subscribing to the ESPN Footy Pod, wherever you get your podcasts.